All right.
All right, you got the stinky.
Boop, boop, boop. And then it should say, I was going to say it should say break, but we took a break before the break slide. But that's okay. So here you go. This is a little more detail there. So this is that same picture by decade. You can see it's a fairly steady decline. And that's true throughout the income percentiles, right? So in 1940, if you were a bottom 1%er, you had a 96% chance, and if you're a 80%er, you had a 92 or something, right? So it's kind of like everybody's at 90, but then as those now and right, there's always right. If your parents are a 1%er, you're likely not, and that's just always been true. And again, that's basically regression to the mean, right? Like if Daddy's a Rockefeller, being the best dentist in New York City still means you're way behind, right? Whatever. So like at some point, your parents make enough money that you're just not going to catch up because it's just really unlikely to get that high of income distribution. So everybody, right, all of these just drop off a cliff in the end. But you can see it doesn't really start until the 80th or 90th in the 40s. And, right, that's also sort of true in the 50s, but you can see, right, it's like slipping. So in the 60s now, if you're desperately poor, you have a good chance of doing better. But, if you're kind of in the middle class, now you're sort of like at a 60% chance. So this doesn't look like a straight line with a cliff. It's now like an S, right? So if you grew up very poor, you tend to do better. And if you grew up very rich, you tend to do worse. And if you're in the middle, in the 60s, you're, 60% chance of doing better. So you can see that you got just this decline. And again, this is by birth year, right? So if you're born in 1960, you're working in like 1990. That's important. This is by birth. Okay, so this isn't anything new. We already knew this kind of, right? This is just like showing you that there's been a steady progression. So, and this is sort of telling that story, right? So this is the picture of how much the parents made, right? So if you're in, right, if you're born in 1940, your parents at age 30 made, $16,000-ish in inflation adjusted on average, and you're more like 50, right? So so this kind of like the bulk of the parents were in the, high teens, low 20s, and the bulk of the kids are at 50. So that's how you get to be 90, right? You just have the mass of people is up at 50, and so if you're, let's imagine that you took a nice, friendly, high quality of life career, and you're down in the lower wage area for kids, you're still significantly above the median peak for the parents from this generation. So that sort of shows how this happens, is there's just, there's some kids that don't do great and some kids that do incredible, but the bulk of the kids are all doing better than all but the most extremely successful parents, right? I mean, it's kind of like in this generation, right? If you're born in 1940, if you're a boring average American, you look like a Harvard man compared to your parents, right? Kind of, right? That's this one. So if we go here, this is the 1980 picture, and you can see how this goes sideways, right? So this is it's effectively the same generation, right? Because if you're born in 1940, then you're age 30, this is about right. I mean, I guess you're having kids in 1970, maybe 65, 75. So it's just a little bit more than one generation later. So this isn't quite grandpa, daddy, kid, but pretty close, right? Pretty close. We're within 10 years of that. And what do you get? So you get the bulk of the parents hovering around 50, and the bulk of the kids hovering around at like 40. But a bigger spread, right? So there's more in the extreme poverty and more way out here, right? So there are some kids that are doing significantly better than even the wealthiest of the parents, but that's just like really rare exceptions, right? So there's a few that just knock it out of the park. And this is also, this picture kind of holds true here as well, right? So the parents' distribution here, I guess you can't see the mouse, but this is, here we go. This is narrow and this is wide, right? And then compared to the parents, this is narrow and this is wide. Just not quite as wide, but still, right? There's a higher dispersion of outcome for kids. So we're seeing, right, that the income picture is just getting wider and wider, right? That the winners are winning a lot, and then there's a lot of people down on the lower end. But you can see right in this picture, right? The red mountain is left shifted compared to the blue mountain. That's that difference. So that's how you end up essentially feeling like you're behind. Right? Okay, so here's where we get into something maybe you talked about. So let's look at this picture. I want you to tell me which story we heard already. Right? One of you in this room told me a story that is supported by this picture. So let's talk about what this is doing first. What does this say? So in 1980, this is how much we're making, right? This is all normalized by my type of career. So we have 4 kinds of careers. High social, high math, right? So this is, technically difficult and socially demanding. And socially demanding, simple. Technical, but not social. And then neither, right? So you've got 4 careers. And of course, the average income in these groups is not the same, right? So we're going to normalize it, right? So if it's just all normalized to this number, okay? So if you were a high social, high math career in 1980, you were making a lot of money for your era, and then that changed over time, okay, right? So if you think about the economy broken up into these 4 categories, who is taking, what kind of work is taking a bigger share of the income, right? Where are the income gains going? To what kind of careers? Okay, so.
Wait, high social, low math, is that what you mean?
Right, okay, let's start with colors. Let's just back it up slowly, right? So which colors are the winners? Red and blue, right? So what's the common theme with reds and blues? High social, right? Not technical, right? So, high social skills are the ones that are really valuable, right? And technical skills, right? This is the bump you get, right? So think about it this way: if you have really great math skills, your bump is from red to blue. Are you glad you did that bump? Not really, right? Those are basically the same line on top of each other, right? Okay. Now, if you're down on the bottom, are you glad you did the yellow to green bump?
Yes.
It's better, but you're still, right? You're still a distant third. You're just, not a distant third, right? So, over this time period, the income growth went to people who had careers or aptitude that required a lot of social acumen, right?
So we're all just a bunch of BSs?
It's all, maybe it's all.
No,
Well,
we like pay a bunch of BS. That's what it is.
Okay.
BSers excel more than others.
Wait.
Why is it
Pause.
social BS?
You are currently enrolled in an MBA program with a giant educational investment in soft skills. Okay, right? So we are not selling your ability to, this is not the ketchup popsicle program, right? Like being able to actually relate to people and lead them well in a caring, meaningful way and have empathy. Those are all important, valuable things in the modern workplace. In fact,
erased them all.
more than algebra,
I know
right?
there.
What's that?
You erased them all.
Oh, I did. But they were, yeah, that's true.
Oh.
So, okay. All right, so that's the picture. Okay, and if we're going to be, right, a little serious for a moment, right, how much does the K-12 public education system make you a blue or red person? What part of your K-12 life gets you blue and red?
Recess.
Recess? For
Arts,
sure. Anything else?
Sports.
Sports?
Choir. Team.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that's right.
Yep. Yep. So, and also another little tricky part of this, right? Are there differences, right? Does this happen? Does the red blue stuff happen at home,
I believe so.
right? So, are some people endowed with families and parents that teach them social, and then others are not?
Yes.
Right? And does our government stuff address that skills gap? Maybe not, right? And what does that make? What does that show up then? I mean, this is not totally true, right? There are plenty of folks all across the income spectrum that do a good job of this, but to some degree, if you're just trying to live and not, right? I mean, if it's poverty time, how much opportunity do you have to teach? Right? Number one, you may not have the social skills to teach to your kids, and number two, you may not have the time or ability to do it, right? So, to some degree, the fact that this is true means that getting stuck in poverty, like, I think there's a factor there, right? So, so that's hard, right? So maybe we do a whole bunch of educational investment in getting kids STEM, and meanwhile they just need to do a lot of football. Not football, some less concussion-oriented team thing where you learn social skills. Yeah, right. I don't know.
Soccer.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, great. We've explained the graph. Who said this though? Which of your team said this?
Well, it was number 2 said something about blue collars.
Yep, that's what I was thinking, right? So this yellow stuff, that's that blue collar work, right? I mean, it's a good, honest, do my thing, right? I mean, think about manufacturing labor, like, right? If I'm a welder or a machinist, I go in, I have high quality, I do my job, but I'm not necessarily I don't have to interface with clients or do a bunch of complex technical stuff. It's just like good, honest work, right? That is no longer really compensated compared to, the BS stuff. That's not really true, but that's what you're calling it, right? So for better or worse, this graph is, I think, evidence in support of this assertion that being a blue-collar worker in the United States is no longer very fun compared to what your parents did. And I think we can all sort of agree with that statement, like based on our personal experience, right? We probably, if we were to think about anecdotes, we would agree, but now we get evidence, right? We get data to back it up. Okay, here's another fun one. You can tell me who got this one. So this is 1940. You can see it, right? We're at 90 forever until we drop off a cliff. And then 1980 is where, unless you're in really bad poverty, you're kind of just batting 50 until you drop off at the end, but go. But, right, now we're going to do some adjusting. Are you ready for this? This is what it would look like if the economic growth rate in 1980 to 2000 whatever, when these people start working, was the same as it was in the 40 to 80 period. Right? So was economic growth better early on in that graph than later? Yes. Right? So in the post-war period, right? When you think about the 50s and 60s, it was better economic growth in that period. Right? So if we were to retroactively say, well, let's just make America as prosperous as the post-war era in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, it would help, right? Again, if the pie is bigger, everybody's slice gets bigger, and it would help. Does it help much? Doesn't appear too much. Right? I mean, we're a little better. We're back to maybe what we were in the what, I guess if you were born in 70 or 60, I think. So a little bit of the problem is that our economy is just not as good. Right, over the last 30 years, this is not quite as good as it was.
Right, but it's not that, would only make it 10% or 12%.
We're not getting to 90 doing that, right? We get to 60. Okay? Something else, 62. So something else is going on. So ready? This is the different version.
Well, somebody,
Yeah.
not to interrupt, but one of the other groups, I think might have been Wayne's group, was talking about technology being so important that, you know, you didn't have the technology back. Well, I mean, you have, I mean, you're always gonna have technology, but you have much, technology is probably growing at a bigger rate than it was back then.
Yes. Okay. And right. I'm gonna run with your point a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So we have an ever increasing technological change pace, right? And does technology tend to reward everybody broadly, income-wise, or does it tend to reward the patent holder or the capitalist who created it, right? I mean, we all benefit a little. This also gets a little funny. This is a true study. So they did a study, and they asked people to, they said, okay, we're going to give you a cash payment, but the trick is you have to delete your Facebook and promise not to turn it back on again. And they had a way to enforce it, right? So they said you're off Facebook for it was like a year or two, right? So deleted, lose everything, you're out for a year. But to do this, we're thinking about paying you, right? So what I want you to do, right, is I want you to tell me how much money I'd have to pay you to do that, right? And if we feel like it's a good deal, we'll actually write you the check. And they got funding from a research granting agency. They had a pile of money, and they were paying people to kill their Facebook. Right? So the question is, what was the average payment people requested to permanently delete their Facebook? Yeah.
36,000?
$36,000.
I think it was less than that.
$3,500.
$3,500.
I would say for a few $100s, just because there's probably people say that maybe a few hundred would make a big enough difference.
No, this is important, right? If you offer too high, then they would just, they wouldn't give you anything, right?
$500.
500.
I always go, yeah, $500.
Yeah. So the truth was a little over 1,000 was the average.
Okay.
This is important, right? How much do people pay for Facebook? Zero, right? So this is kind of what's wacky, right? So we pay $0 and we get something that we value on average at about $1,000. So
That makes sense. I'm building a house in California, and I'm talking to my neighbors, and I'm talking to surveyors, and talking to the city, and doing it all over Facebook.
yeah, and so this is where it
There's
gets so.
no way
Yep,
that
yep.
that's not valuable.
And let's talk GDP, right? So how much does right? So Facebook is generating $1,000 of value per user. How much of that is GDP? None of it, right? Because nobody pays anything, right? I mean, not really. Right? So I know this is like last week's lecture, but there's a little bit of we have sort of all this value we're experiencing that doesn't show up anywhere. It's like sort of ephemeral. But that speaks to this, right? Because we all have this amazing product that's worth $1,000 to us, but none of that shows up. Where does the money show up? Yeah, well, in Mark Zuckerberg's pocket, right? There's like one guy who has 50% of the company, so he creates $1,000 of value for us, and he only gets 158, right? That's actually the valuation of Facebook per user. It's about 158 bucks per user, right? So, but that means, right, this technology thing you're speaking to, right? The more Facebook technologies we have that are making one person uber rich, right? That's going to do what to this? It creates a problem, right? Because then you get all the income is going to the one guy. Now, so that's where, again, maybe this is a measurement issue, right? So maybe we're all fabulously wealthy, it just doesn't feel like it because we don't feel like, right? We don't feel like wealthy people because we have Facebook, right? I don't know, like, ooh, look at this $1,000 tool I get to have, you know? Anyway. So your technology point could talk to this, right? So it can create an income distribution issue, right? Because all these technologies tend to feed wealth into a smaller, concentrated number of people. Okay? So it'd be nice, right? Is let's adjust this, right? What if instead of adjusting for bad economic growth, what if we adjust it for the distribution issue, right? The one percenter business, right? There you go, right? So it's not. So again, you put them together, you'd probably get closer, right? But you can see the bulk of the, fading of the American dream, right? The 1980s kids not making as much as their parents is caused by the different distribution of income for in the 2010s relative to the 1970s.
There you go, Wayne.
Yep. So team 3, way to go, right? You got it. So and it matters a lot, right? It matters a lot. And this is kind of fun, right? And we talked about this, right? Is this income inequality thing the same across the planet? No. So I think if I push page down, we might see some. There we go. Okay, first of all, it's important to note in the United States, right? This is a 50, right? In Norway, it's a 70. So these graphs do not have the same y-axis. So Norway's inequality, right? So the Norwegian dream instead of the American dream is fading a lot less than that graph indicates because, you're still, right, even if you're born in 1980, you have an 80% chance of being better than your parents, right? So they're still, up there.
Which one has the most equity?
Okay, let's look. Somebody tell me which one has the most equity. Okay, first we have to talk colors, right? There's 3 colors. Talk me through the colors.
What does baseline mean?
Baseline means the truth as it is, right? So baseline is like the actual chance you're better than your parents, right? The gray one is if we fix the inequality problems, right? So if we restore the income inequality to 1950s level or 1940s level, you get the gray. And if you make economic growth to be like it was back then you get the blue, right? So if I look at Norway, right, does fixing income distribution do much? No. Does fixing growth do much? No, right? Probably because the Norwegians have not a ton of income inequality and they've had a bunch of income growth over this period, right? So it's kind of like they're just, their economy's been fine, and so it still is declining, but it's fairly stable, and there's not this huge difference caused by income inequality. Now look at Sweden, right?
Strong income growth, low, or they fixed.
Okay, think about it this way, right?
Equality.
Do they have a Swedish dream problem? Right? Is it harder to make more than your parents if you're born in 1980 than born in 1940 in Sweden? Yes, right? So there's a Swedish dream problem, okay? What is the problem with the Swedish dream?
It's fixed income growth.
Right. So the Swedish economy has just been bad, right? They took like a rotten apple and shared it equally with everybody, right? So we all get the same bad pie, okay? Or at least it even get worse, right? We don't, right in America, where we have a situation where the pie got bigger, but the share from at the top was growing so fast it swamped everything else, right? That's not the problem in Sweden. Sweden, they have a growth problem, right? And if you think about Swedish politics, that's probably not hugely surprising, right? You'd probably be if you're a fairly socialist state, you don't expect to have huge income inequality. It happens, but not in Sweden. What about the UK? Do they have a UK dream problem? Yep. Is it caused by inequality?
Yes.
Yes. Is it caused by income growth? Slightly. Yep. Right, and then in the US, it's especially starting at about here, we have inequality making the biggest difference. So yeah. So it's right. So again, it is important to know, right? So there's none of these are trending up, right? So all over the planet, it was a lot easier to exceed your parents' income in 1940s, and that might speak to this depression issue, right? Because that was a global phenomenon, right? So we're all, doing better than our depression era great grandparents or grandparents or whatever, but that in the U.S. it's a lot more severe than other places. Okay, so that's the break we already took. There we go.
Not to
Yeah.
go overnight, but I'm just curious
Yeah.
if this relates at all. So I was reading some kind of statistic, and I wish I could quote it, I can't, but it was something to the effect of that in the next 30 years, so kids that are like in primary school now, in the next 30 years, the majority of occupations that they're going to go into, or percentage of them haven't been created yet. So I mean, just the potentially that you're going to have these, markets of things that are going to be, being created that the parents didn't really even have to deal with. I mean, it was something it was some kind of an education article, like I said, I wish I could quote it, but basically saying that the schools are really struggling because they're trying to prepare students to succeed in things that don't even exist yet.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you a great example. Personal anecdote, totally real. Okay, so think about this. So, when you were in second grade, I don't know if you had to do this. I had to make a little book, about me, and I put my handprint in it, right? And part of that was coming up with what you wanted to be when you grew up, right? So, anybody feeling Sherry? What did you want to be when you were in second grade?
NBA player.
Okay, right, basketball star.
So it's just a couple letters different. I mean, no, he's an NBA player.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's right. One letter up. I actually wanted to be a scientist. I had a picture of me in the lab coat with some beakers. Yep. So that kind of came true. My, there's people across campus who really disagree that I'm a scientist, but I know I am, so they can feel. Okay.
Yeah.
But think about it. What would your kindergarten class, your second grade class, or third grade, what would those be? Astronomer, marine biologist, astronaut, fireman. Okay, right? My daughter's kindergarten class. The #1 career aspiration for kindergartners in 2013 was, care to guess? YouTuber. Yep. Right? So, this is not a career that existed. Right? How, as a first grade teacher, do you prepare to help your kids live their YouTube dreams, right? It's probably not times tables, right? Maybe we could take turns editing videos and making glitter slime. I don't know. Okay, right. Right, yeah. Social media influencer, right? That's not something that existed in the past. So. For sure. Now this week, we end up fighting last generation's battles sometimes. Okay, well so I want to get into, we got another little participatory exercise here. Enough of me talking, let's do some stuff. So let me show you where we're going to go though. So this is our empirical project 1, and to do it, we're going to go to the Opportunity Atlas. So if you have a laptop or a phone, some kind of internet-enabled device, we're going to go there. So yeah, hopefully you had a chance to poke around on it. I'm going to close this out. But we are going to go there, opportunityatlas.org. And there, right, so there is a ton of stuff going on with this. And we just, right, so here we go.
Oh, you already have lacrosse in there.
I do, yep, that's right. And you can zoom in and go all over the place. Now this, so a little bit, right, so let's talk specifically about what this data shows me, right? So, this is, right, they mapped income from tax returns, right? They mapped income from tax returns by name, and so, right, don't forget, income, right, so income tax returns, you have to put your social security number, right, and crucially, the social security number of your kids, right? So they can map the ultimate income from tax returns from the 2010s to tax returns from before and connect up where people grew up, right? So they know where you lived when you were a kid, and they know what you make now.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. So, right, so this is a picture of, right, so again, right, we know in 1980 or 1970 or whatever, we know how much mom and dad make because they filed a tax return then, and we know how much the 1980 born person makes now because they filed a tax return, and we know where everybody lives, all right? So we can say, okay, in this particular instance, right, for this person, did they make more than their parents, yes or no? That's kind of this question, right? Okay? And we can check for everybody. So you go for everyone in La Crosse, Wisconsin, what percentage of them made more than their parents at age 30? Okay? And of course, right, so are we checking, right, so is this where they ultimately ended up living, or is this where they grew up?
Where they grew up.
Where they grew
You
up.
said the tax returns were parents.
Yes, right. That's important. So if I grew up in the heart of Alabama and I moved to New York City and I'm a hedge fund manager, right? I am not a New York dot. I am an Alabama dot because that's where I grew up, right? And I'm going to be bucking this trend because I'm making more than my parents did. Okay. So. Right, so as it is right now, this is this is for people who grew up in the low incomes. This is you grew up in a 25%-ish income group, right? So your parents were in the bottom 25% of income earners as a household, and then we're going to see if you ultimately, what percentage of the time do you ultimately exceed their income, right? So the median is 33, the highest is at 38, right? Something like that. All right, so let's think about what this means, right? So if things are going great, what happens? Right? I grow up, I know everybody in this picture grew up in the bottom 25%. So you grow up, probably in poverty, right? However we define that. You probably grew up in poverty. Right? So, you grew up, and what do we hope to see? Right? I grew up in poverty, and I'm now out of poverty. Right? Exceeding the income of my parents. Okay? And, right, in some places, this happens more often than in other places, or in some places, my average income upon leaving is, higher. Okay? So, another way to think about this, right, is if I have the option, right, let's imagine that I'm, up in heaven and I get to deposit myself anywhere in the country, I'm going to land somewhere in poverty, but I get to pick my town, right? So where do I want to grow up in poverty in the United States in the 1980s?
Upper Midwest.
Yep, right? So the North Dakota is really good, South Dakota is really good, except for two giant red exceptions. Anybody know what's going on with those?
Indian reservation.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. And other places that are good here? Yep. Let me see if I can. Can I?
Yeah, that's Wyoming.
And this is Arizona is no good, but and Eastern Idaho is better than Western Idaho.
Put it on Alaska just for.
Oh yeah, where did Alaska go? Oh, there they are.
Just curious. Oh wow. Okay. Thank you. Not all the way up there.
I know where's Sitka and Whittier.
Right there. Sitka's right
Yep.
where the yellow is.
Yeah.
Right on the island.
And we can find Hawaii. There's Hawaii.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah, well, okay, there we go. All right, now where's bad?
Wow. So I want to be
Where is bad?
bad. Oh my gosh, Maine.
Yep.
Go back to Alaska.
Yeah, but Maine is not good either, right?
But why? That doesn't make sense to me. Is it just because they have a low population?
There's a ton of mysteries in here.
Yeah. Okay.
Tons of mysteries. Okay. So this is just the population at large, but we can do some fun stuff, right? So this is where, right? So this is a map of where it's good and bad to grow up poor. This is everybody, right? So let's go to everybody. Here's everybody, and you can see the picture's not that different. I mean, there's a little. I mean, it changes a little. Let's do that again.
Yeah, look at California.
Well, like Southwest Texas, they did something to improve.
Yeah. Oh, that's true, right? So this is interesting, right? So if you're in Southwest Texas in poverty, that's okay, but for everybody, it's not good at all, right? So if you're a regular person growing up on the Mexico border, it's bad, right? But poverty is okay, for whatever reason. Okay, and even within Texas, right, you can see there's, right, so here's Houston, here's Dallas, right? I mean, so Texas is kind of like an interesting mixed bag, right? And now we can, right, so now we can do something even more fun. Let's just do everybody, right? And instead of saying, where would be good in America to grow up poor, we can say, where would it be good in America to grow up black? How about that? Right, once again, Midwest. Now lacrosse. Lacrosse is actually pretty good-ish. We just have to zoom in to see it, I think. Let me see. Oh, actually, that's not true. So not good.
What is that Alaska again? Sorry.
Yep.
I know.
Those gray areas?
Right there, yeah. Okay, no, that's okay. The gray is what? You don't have to go all the way in there.
The gray, right, so again, right, there has to be enough, right, so you got to have enough black folks to make
Yeah,
a
that's why I said-
database, right? So rural South Dakota, you just don't have enough to make it work. But again, right, this is like a similar picture, right? But not entirely, right? Not entirely.
Southwest Texas, man, that's good.
Yep, and again, right, it's kind of the same part of the southeast. This is not good. But New England, good. And even like right, LA. What about Chicago, right? Look at Chicago. Where'd we go? Oh, we're over here. No, yeah, not great.
Not as good as California.
Right? So yeah, there's lots of okay, here we go. What about any guesses if you're a woman? If you're a female in the United States, is the map gonna be different?
I think so. A
So
little
it's-
bit, but not a lot.
Worse generally. So you think it's just gonna turn pinker. Let's find out. Yeah, almost no difference.
Interesting.
Yep. So there's not. Now there are interesting gender things that happen, but you're not going to get it. Big picture, yes. Okay. And we can drill down. So like, let's go. If we go look at lacrosse here, we can zoom in. We can see. All right. Well, let's look at being poor again, right? So if I have to grow up in poverty in lacrosse, where do I want to be? Like not in lacrosse, kind of, right? So here, north, right, north of West Avenue, and especially into so here, right down in this is like basically Shelby, right? Not quite, but
I was gonna say, where people with poverty don't live.
yeah,
That's a curious,
More people.
but wait, this is population based then, because that's just a really low population area. Like, that's mostly trains in, like, the industrial area of Train and Chart,
Oh, here where or here,
in the dark black.
here?
There's not a lot of residential in that.
There's tons of residential.
Yeah, this is like I used to live. Yeah, I feel bad. So this is where I used to live. I was on Glendale. Here, this is my house. Or actually, that's my sister, dead ending right at the end of that cul-de-sac, and we were right here on the corner, two big oak trees.
So that whole section between Glendale and Ward, that's all the Chart and the
Yeah, the Train.
Chart.
Chart is
chart is
Go down, it's at the bottom corner of that page.
Yeah.
where's Losey on here?
It's that line right between the
On the
dark and light.
Oh, yeah, so
It's the one where everyone has to go 25 now.
I know. Railroad tracks. This is Losey, right? This is Losey, isn't it?
And Ward is that.
So this is train. Yeah, this is train and chart right here. No?
Go down.
Go down.
That
It actually says it on the map. Train on there. Keep going down.
Not only go down.
South.
Right there.
Oh, there we go. Here, right? Yeah, not a lot of. Yeah, there we go. Train, chart. Yep. There we go. Okay. So, right? Isn't this? Yeah, so that's kind of, right, interesting. So, okay, so let's, right? So I mean, we know La Crosse. What's different about these neighborhoods compared to here?
Blue collar.
Maybe. Now, don't forget, right?
Historically,
These are all people who lived in poverty, right? So everybody here grew up in poverty. So you grew up in poverty up here, or you grew up in poverty down here, right? You're up on the north side. Where's north side here?
right there.
Copeland Avenue. So here's north side, right? So everybody's growing up in poverty, but we get these differences, right?
Home values are different.
So is this, where are the high cost of living areas and the low cost of living areas? I mean, what's the pattern here? Is this like,
So blue collar, that whole French Island was all blue collar, remember? At least this is the stories that I heard. When we first moved here, we thought, oh, this is so great, French Island. And everyone said, oh yeah, the police wouldn't even used to go on that place because it was so bad. And that whole north side was all blue collar, that yellow section. So those house prices were less, that education level was less.
yeah, no, it's true. There's like a funny historical like deal with north side versus south side.
Yeah.
And nowadays, right, north side of the cross is where millennials raise their kids, right? It's like, but that's not what people, like, I don't,
It's not historically what they did.
Right.
Maybe that's why.
yep. So yeah, okay. Well, so you can see, like, at least for our city, there's like these differences. There's some fascinating ones. Okay, so this is what I want to do, right? So this is the activity. We had an activity we were going to do. So this is it. All right. So this is the start of your empirical project 1. So now I'm going to be a little mean. So using a different group. So whoever you sat with before, don't sit with them anymore. You gotta get up and shuffle a little bit. What we're going to do is explore this atlas and try to address these 2 questions as a group together, right? So we do a group version of this. And what the idea is to go find like your hometown or a city that you know enough about to sort of, intelligently explore about it, and answer these 2 things, right? So, and again, as a group, how does average upward mobility, which is what we're looking at, right? That's the colors here. For poor the bottom 25%, look at in your little neck of the woods where you're peaking, compare to your state and the country, right? So if you grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, zoom in on Little Rock and say, how does Little Rock compare to Arkansas compare to America? Okay. And do kids where you grew up have a better or worse chance of climbing the income ladder than the average child in America? So you want to be able to address that. Okay? And then do the same thing for the 75%ers, right? So if you grew up with a little bit of income privilege, how does that look? Right? Were you able to, right? Is it a different story, same story, or what? Make sense? So we're going to poke around in this in your location of choice as a little activity. Okay? Make sense? All right, so go ahead, stand up, randomly shuffle, grab some new friends, pick somebody's location, and then go hunting.
You go ahead and then I can't be this good.
Come over.
Come over here.
I don't want to say it with your husband, but
Yeah.
look at this. I don't like that.
Would you like, real sort of poke around your Yeah, that's awesome. Do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, he's also.
All right, what do you think? Where are we going in this period?
Used to have the beer. Well, I grew up in a town called Dakota, Minnesota. I'm curious to know if we have enough data.
Yeah, we'll find out. Yeah, that's good. Go check. Yeah. Yep. It's nice if you can get a little neighborhood information.
Used to there was definitely a difference because I was like on one side of the highway.
Oh, hopefully you have this.
See if it shows up.
Yeah. Be interesting to see if it does. Well, and this is what's hard, right? Don't forget, right? If let's say one side of the highway has a bunch of poverty and the other side doesn't, we're still looking at people growing up in poverty. So the question, right, is, do you want to be in poverty on the poverty side of the tracks, or do you want to be in poverty on the not poverty side? Right? Does that matter?
And I have
Is
a
it,
whole year.
yeah. So it's not right. So it's not like would you rather be in poverty or be rich? It's not. It's you're in poverty either way. It just do you want to, are your neighbors also in poverty? I guess.
So this is the first one.
Correct. So okay, let's do the side of the tracks thing, right? So the question is, if you were poor on the poor side of the tracks, what's your outcome? If you're poor on the rich side of the tracks,
So we're doing
what's your
three
you
things.
still grew up poor.
Maybe
So
the
it's basically asking,
Yeah.
okay, so if you had a choice, would you rather be poor in a poor area or poor in a
See it on your phone.
Oh, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's one dimension. There's a million things.
Yeah,
you can
but
add.
so in that instance, and then if you're white and poor or
Where you
black,
focused on, there you go.
Yep. Well, I guess it would be, right, it would be, would you rather be black in a poor area or black in a rich area? Would you rather be white in a poor area or white in a rich area? If you knew which one you lived. And I think they have that data in there. You can go into. Oh, sorry. I should show you. There's a lot of different things you can pick to look at too. It's not just this. Just real quick. So, like, here's the cross, right? We can actually right over here on this drop down. There's so many things you can do, right? So let's look at incarceration, right? We can say like, how much. What's the incarceration rate? So, okay, yeah, so this is interesting, right? So if you grew up in, right, basically Washburn, right? You have a chance of being currently incarcerated of 4.9%. Okay, so that sounds high. If you grew up in Watts, it's 44%. The chance of being currently incarcerated.
like presently
Presently incarcerated, which
in a
means
jail cell.
right. Which means if you grow up in Watts, the chance that you have that you do time at some point in your life is like 75, 80.
Oh, I know.
44% like you're sitting.
Yeah. So 44% of the kids who were born in 1980 Watts are that's LA, right? That's the rough part of LA. And this isn't great stuff. Sorry, now this is Compton, right? You've heard of Compton? Like California knows how to party Compton. That number is like I think it's like 4 or 5. Yeah. So like the incarceration rate in Compton is like the same as La Crosse, but Watts is like unbelievably high.
The mall and Barry. Income,
I understand.
So this is important, right? Sorry. So this little drop-down thing that you can play with, right? That's how you can maybe understand some of these differences,
So
right?
1.1K is $100, right?
So this black one.
Taking
Yeah.
a kid who grew up
Oh, we were beyond. I always like to say,
but you can move 1,000 miles.
they could be anywhere.
But
If you grew up in a farm area, that's I guess what it is now is no relevance.
yeah.
This is a cheese trash.
The gray part?
Yeah, maybe. So if I try that.
Oh.
So you can see how large Portland is
Yeah.
of that area. So like this is clean. And then you get to Nolanville or Parker Heights.
Yeah, it's interesting as you grab your location.
Area.
But there's this because nobody would see how to live. Easier, you change the. But you know what? Was usually
How nice to the US.
Yeah, exactly.
It was kind of neat. You would see.
Yeah, it doesn't seem. Right, it's like it knows.
they can roll up to the
I think it does grab your location.
It started with being normal. So
state.
it didn't start with being.
Oh yeah, sorry. Search for different progress.
Yep. That's so true.
That's so true. You want to do Reno, so maybe you do Reno.
Hey, if anybody else want to go to the US.
US, yeah.
So Hamilton, Hamilton's about 5 streets.
Coming.
No opportunity, if you grow up northeast of that.
Stay for the next section.
But no, it's so true.
What is the zero?
You can get it.
The 0% job loan.
Okay, all right.
$1,100.
When I was starting
What's
this
yours?
race,
Okay.
no
This is
opportunity.
looking like
You don't have the opportunity.
incarceration.
It's interesting.
Okay, just comparing for you.
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay, so,
thinking.
so check it out. So if you grew up, if you were born in 1980, your
I'm not
average.
changed.
You want to do
Okay, wait.
This is 1980.
Get out of town and go towards.
No, but I
a
think
lot of other things we can do. Go up and click where it says.
So you can change it from 1980? So this only works for you. I would imagine.
Yeah, oh, but you know,
I don't know, I mean, I'm pretty sure. Because again, it's based on data availability, right?
Okay, so
I don't know how many, I know, yeah, I went to school age level, sophomore, and majority of people I went to school with, I went there.
Okay, right, so in 1980,
Average.
somebody made some money in child tax, right? And on that tax return,
In the
They
way
said-
we're looking at.
they said
I
that's
got
all
some
they did.
kids, and here's their name and their social. Right?
So mine is here, right, somewhere.
Okay, well, okay, so let me tell you how to get this, right? So,
Well, so the.
in 1980, there's some parents who reported an income.
That's where you guys.
And if we're filtering on low, right, you guys go here.
No, now that I know it's only 80s, I would go.
Stop, we go to the bathroom, leave a badge,
So they would
It's like,
come.
okay, so
It's okay, it's
you
good,
go to our.
it's still-
We have two morning parties, not everybody would come up to our house, to look out over the ocean to see when the big wave was coming.
I'm not gonna change.
Nice, fun,
It was
okay.
great, I mean, it was great. I'm
Well,
not-
you could sell.
Okay, so-
But I'm gonna go with 1980 and
How
how.
does it compare?
we would
with-
do it.
Right, so again, there's more in 19, so the data you have, right, is 1980 and 2014. So in 1980, some people made some money, heads up bills. And then in 2010, the median income.
Yes, right, yeah.
So I would
Yeah,
say.
and in 1980, we're it's.
Oh, the case.
It's gotta be good.
Which is Kevin.
If it's anywhere, right, so like mine is just.
Well, and actually, the data is smarter than that. Actually, what they did, it's intent, what they did, was they tracked where you live.
We're all gonna.
Counted the number of years, and basically, they said, okay, well, you're 30% California and 40%, you know, whatever, right? So it's all adjusted. Okay. So then you would go to your little part of Alaska, you know, people in my little part of Alaska.
This is what they need.
How many of them
You can put it into.
and by how much?
How do you know? I was gonna say, how do you know?
Well, you know, because, okay, so you look at.
You said how many.
Oh, sorry.
You just make a general statement.
Right, I'm making some, I know. So like if we zoom, let's zoom out and get more.
So maybe just. I
Because
see as you zoom out, it starts.
And we'll say, okay, so this little region of Alaska.
It looks very similar.
Are you?
That's why I said you stay.
39. Right, okay.
We're down here.
No, that's fine. Right, so,
Every
so,
county.
okay, so, right, so
You can go
in
back in.
this entire, okay, let's,
Every single
do all of
Oh, there it is.
all this. information.
So,
Okay.
it's,
So now we've got all of America.
So
The median
the
person.
people in Minneapolis.
is at 46. And if you grew up in historic Alaska, as a middle class person, you are making
And not true.
Well, how do you know that? No. Okay, this is right. So this is right. This is I grew up in Cincinnati, okay, and I moved away probably, and now I'm making some kind of money. So, and this is everybody in Cincinnati. Right. So the entire, all of the children of
You're in
Cincinnati.
Minnesota.
So that means that you should put yourself in.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. So all of the
I grew
kids.
up on that.
Right.
South Dakota.
Right, so this is all the middle class kids in Sitka ended up making about $41,000 more money as adults.
As they grew up.
very
which is
similar
not
to the upcoming
higher
West
in-
compared to.
Yeah, yeah. that's
Right.
all you're saying.
And if we go, so like if we go to the Dakotas,
It's a good place to have your
you don't have like,
for generation.
that's right, that's why I mean,
Put you in a team.
right, right.
People who
still trying to
aren't
convince you this would be
Right, because there's rent job groups based on
People
the
that are-
market. The other
Um,
project is based on
1980s one of them.
so income. Try some of that too.
I'm actually curious to see, I didn't know it was exceptional type.
Yeah, oh, yes, okay. Yeah, right, so, okay, so I grew up, say, so if I grew up in Alaska, right,
Right.
so I grew up in Alaska, and I leave, and I go to Minnesota, and I compete with Minnesotans for Minnesota jobs. Probably better than moving Charlotte, right, so I leave Alaska and I go to Charlotte, right? Growing up in Charlotte is a bad idea, it's bad. Yeah, it's the worst big city to grow up for this venture. But there are lots of great careers, right, so if you grow up there, you just show up there and work there, awesome, right? So, so you grew up in Alaska, you move to Charlotte, you get a good job in Charlotte, and now you're making, you know, a lot more.
What's interesting about Winona and incarceration
Right,
rate,
except for that's not the typical story. The typical story if you're in Sitka is you either leave Sitka and stay in Sitka, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, it makes about 40 grand.
actually are better
Right?
off
Whereas if you grew up in rural South Dakota,
than the kids
you
that
either
grew up
stayed or left
with
with
the
your
downtown where it was, where the income.
Right, so if your childhood is a South Dakota childhood,
Yeah, so if you're.
you are
east
on
of
average a
Hamilton,
$66,000 person. If you were middle class,
Right at the, you're right at, you're below the.
So I bet a lot of that
Bad.
is pipeline, right? So
And if
if
you're.
you grew up in rural North Dakota or South
Maine or
Dakota,
Winona,
you just stayed put, and now you're pipelining.
It automatically
it
does.
makes sure you look
How's that?
like you're making point and a half
See,
higher.
It's true, you are.
Because if you.
So that's how that's, I think that's partly how the Dakotas are called.
So you
Right, but like Wisconsin, Minnesota, I mean, it's kind of like, well, you grew up in the Midwest, and, well, I think, right, so yeah, if you leave, like, maybe you leave the Midwest and go to Charlotte, but you're still, right, you're kicking butt, wherever you go. We, that's mostly true. Oh, I know, you're trying to do that. Okay, so, oh, sorry, let's go back to this.
I got them up, I was just gonna tell you, I answered the question.
Oh, which town did you pick?
You can import your.
Okay, we're all looking at,
We're all looking at different states.
oh, that's fine, that's fine, so,
Because
okay.
she's from
Sure,
here, which
Great.
is awesome.
so, so if you're in Texas, okay, so let's go to
Makes
Texas.
it even better.
So where's your part of Texas?
Okay, great, so let's zoom in there, zoom in, and we're going, oh, you don't have that, use that one. I'll get one. Zoom in, zoom in. Okay.
So there's one in there too.
Yeah, I saw that on.
So,
It's kind of weird that this is Main Street, it's all one of the.
So it's in the.
And there's a couple of others. So how do I like
Oh.
do
By
that?
just going.
Okay, so here's the deal. This is kids in poverty, right? So this is kids growing up in poverty, right? In your town, basically, right? And so the question was,
That way, so I just remove this.
how? Okay. So how does the how's upper mobility in your town compared to your state?
It's all lighter than that.
So let's go
I
ahead.
gave it low, because that's what I.
Yep, yep. No. That's not. You don't want that. And although you should have done low, it's just for different reasons. We want to look at kids that grew up in poverty,
Okay.
right? So if you grew up in poverty, we want to know how did you do?
We just.
If you grew up in poverty in this town, it doesn't look good.
Zoom
Ah, and if I zoom out,
Kind of
look at
let our
it.
eyes blur and.
So I did all of races.
I think you can define the track.
Mine looks worse though.
Yeah.
Yep, sure. Right, so there we go. This is,
So it's 75 percent.
that's fine, but you still have that region for us, right? So here, so that's Texas.
75 to 80% of the.
And that makes. And there's your track, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay, and so for Texas, right, for Texas.
Texas, because that's the code, right?
Okay, where's the cool like picture? Show this. There it is, okay. So this is just Texas, right? Because I mean, it's, there's a little bit of easy, but that's basically.
How do you know, I mean.
Because that's where
what
it's at. You kind of just like, if you make the map.
How did you get them to compare?
Look at this. You got
It's-
it.
Isn't that cool the way
It does whatever
isolates
you-
and
You
changes?
zoom out to get.
So let's just look most
All of a
states.
sudden, now that
Alright,
it's
so there we go, we're just in
compared
Texas.
to the surrounding
And you can
area.
see.
For the state, same track.
but it's, nobody stands there. It's about,
Yeah, when you zoom in, it doesn't look so bad, but compared to.
yeah, 33 maybe.
There you go.
Right? So 30, right, so the typical person growing up in Texas in poverty, right,
Then you're staying.
ends up at
Or
33. If you grew up in poverty where you lived, you end up at 32.
I mean, what is the average of people?
So you're not really different from
That's saying what else you said.
if you grew up in poverty in that town. Yep. Okay, now if we zoom out into America, so let's
Yeah.
go to America.
This is 30.
So you said
I'm meeting expectations.
I'm meeting expectations.
The whole US.
Okay, right? So I grew up in poverty in America. Right, so
Some
what's
things on
my
the lower
average
end.
number here?
And you wonder like down south, it's just
Yeah.
crazy.
So basically,
These are all low income.
so yeah, your little
That's very
part of the
interesting.
world was
But no-
about as good at bringing people out of poverty as America is. So not great at it, not terrible at it.
Okay, so now that I understand.
That southeast was all.
So, and
That
did you do
that
all
goes
or
through
white?
all of the first question.
Let's see, at least the first part. Oh yeah, yep. That's all the first one.
His,
I don't know if the average is not so bad.
so it's basically about the same.
Yep. Cool. So do that for the different ones, and then you're gonna do the same thing for the 75%. So if you grew up with a little bit of money,
So we just change it to high.
and then don't forget zoom in on Texas, and then do the whole thing, and also zoom way in on your little part. Because it could be right. It could be that if you are in poverty where you were, you do average.
My little values are good.
Yes, correct. Right, but it's possible, right, that being rich where you were is not good, right? You might lose, right? Right, it's possible that being a rich kid in this town doesn't stay, right? For whatever reason. I mean, I don't know, you have to look at the data, right? But it could be that the poor do fine, but the rich fall back relative to
Yeah, of course.
So, you're low, oh, I
Well,
got
they
it.
brought it in 99, and now it's improving.
And the low is
So
actually
what is it?
high.
So that's growing up as
yeah. So
And then
for
actually-
Alaska, growing up in Sitka, super simple.
Right.
Because your expectation is that you're gonna make some more. Right, if you grew up in poverty in Alaska, in Alaska, you're making 20.
Just like the.
But if you grew up in poverty in Sitka, you're making 32.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm like, there's-
Right in that kind of T word.
Right, makes sense. Okay, so then the rest of the US, I just put everyone?
Yeah, just zoom out.
I think that's gotta be a little bit closer.
Oh.
So there's just
the
a
whole
whole
nation,
nation.
like,
Yeah, you did.
And then,
Oh,
and then,
It's a long
then I'm in low. Okay.
Yeah.
This is
For the nation.
high,
Yeah.
high income and all.
It's bad.
Better, Alaska, worse for the nation. Overall bad.
Whatever number is yellow.
Got it.
Change it to
Thank you,
the
thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Almost 3 times higher.
These kids don't want to go to drugs.
And then it
It's, you know, it's not true.
So this is encouraging is the select change. I think this is like what's shown. Wait, no, select. Try.
So you can change it out. That gives you that
That's one.
right there as a
It's
high.
relative.
And then everyone gives you the US.
So, and this is your thing. So in here, world, Wisconsin, Minnesota. And again, we're in poverty, right? So if you grew up in poverty in Wisconsin, Minnesota, you make about 40.
That's it.
But
So
if you grew up in poverty in your little part of the world,
with money in Minnesota in general,
so it's way better.
I'm telling you, Midwest.
you're doing pretty well. If you go with money in the
And then if you just
other than the East End,
Yeah.
you did okay. But if you grew up in the East End, town,
And so now it's not.
It's not
So
like.
you're 45
It's
to
not like
the world.
It's not a different shade of.
how many people really go to
Nice silver
75,
spoon you have over there.
75 percentile in the East End of town?
I'm not excited.
Not even hiking.
Okay, so.
Well, how's something?
Select group.
Because it doesn't even.
Do you feel like you know how to address like the two questions?
Right.
On screen, if you click that. I mean, we just kept it pretty basic.
How about that kid?
Okay, sure. So let me put this. If I okay, you're looking at Reno, right?
Reno compared to La Crosse.
Okay, well let's just start with Reno. If I am a child growing up in poverty in Reno, Is that bad? Like, is it bad to be in poverty in Reno compared to like Nevada? Okay, I'll change it then. Let's get our little part of Reno we care about. Okay. Let's yes, let's yeah, yes, and then
Only a 10% chance. Or 15, 26. Actually, that's a lot.
Well, that's not the money.
Oh, I see.
But that's registered with money.
So you kind of just take it over.
that was it? Okay, so if I grew up,
This is your area.
we want to do poverty. So let's say I grew up in poverty. Oh, and we want, oh yeah, so, okay, I don't know how this versus thing. So we want to do, since we don't want to compare low versus high, we want to compare,
You want to compare like the city to the whole state.
the city to the whole state. Okay, so if I grew up in poverty in Reno, I can expect to make 32,000. Let's do,
When we say the highest was like 34, 40.
right, so if I grew up in poverty in Reno, I can expect to make 32. If I grew up in poverty in Nevada, I can expect to make 37.
No, that's the median for, that's the median for.
You're much better off going across the river.
The yellow.
Okay.
Nobody
so
wants to
that's
stay
true,
here.
then when I click this,
Nobody wants to
this
live in
number
Marsh.
won't change, right?
Yeah, right.
That's supposed to be that, no, it will change, because it'll change from low income to all.
I just saw that it was below the 35, so just take
Okay,
So
so,
everyone needs the state, is that?
nope, yeah, America.
But are we, everyone needs America.
Yes. So, and what this means actually, so this dot is Washoe County.
Or is that the US?
On screen is Nevada, right? So Nevada averages 37.
I just,
Area, or is it?
the crescent is all.
On screen, it's just on screen. So there's a little bit of like this.
Yeah, like Tahoe.
So, right, so being in poverty in Reno is bad compared to Nevada. Okay, and then if and you can see what, okay, because, right, if I grow up in poverty in Reno. Oh, no, sorry, no, so, but you got that, okay, so point, just look at Nevada only, so zoom your screen in to look at just Nevada. Yeah. Oh, yeah, other direction there. Okay, I get,
Feel like having
right, yeah, and then drag it over or whatever. Cause you wanna get Nevada on your screen. There we go, okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, so now, right, so, and you're looking at White Pine County, so White Pine County is 37. There's the green one, right, it's 32. So if you grew up in poverty in Reno, it's 32. And if you grew up in poverty in, Nevada.
The numbers play out.
Oh, see the, yeah, we gotta turn off the,
Yeah. And it stays.
yeah, there we go.
And
Well, not everyone, we want on screen.
We
Yes, we
switched
want low,
to
we
green,
want on
that's
screen.
the other.
Oh, yeah.
when you're comparing it, maybe this is what you're asking.
And you want on screen. So what that's gonna do is that's gonna say, because you still have, it's old out County, California, we gotta change that to the Reno. So just click on it. Just, yeah, there we go. So now we're in Washoe County. All right. So again, if you grew up, if you grew up in poverty in Washoe County, you can expect to make $32,000 as
You
an
grew up
adult.
in this area, right?
Okay? If you grew up in poverty in Nevada, you can expect to make, because it says median right there, 37.
And then everyone you said is the US?
And then okay, so let's wait, so let's pause for a second. So, So if I'm in poverty, do I want to be in Reno or not in Reno? Not in Reno. Anywhere in Nevada but Reno, kind of, right? Okay. Now let's look at America. So you just click everyone.
Now I'm gonna get back to where I was.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I'm sure it'd be used instead of that area.
So you want this? You want to show distribution?
Okay.
And we're still want to click. We don't want to be in Twilla. We want to be in Washoe, and then we want to. So now we're
Are
gonna
you
do.
looking at the poverty rate?
You're right. So if I grew up in poverty in Reno, I'm at 32.
I know,
If I grew up in
that's
poverty
why I was
in
wondering.
Maryland,
I'm sorry, what was that?
How do you pull along with all of them? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, just,
that would be.
Yeah, but that's based on what their parents file tax returns.
Yeah. So if you key it as a column.
You're pretty familiar with So is it
This area is the poverty.
when I think of that, and then, you know, like,
Terrible area.
Las Vegas has this big economic, so I mean, is that, like, I would think when you're looking at, like, you know, compared to the whole state, that a city like,
Maybe it's just the poverty rate period.
Las Vegas being a big
They definitely
population.
would
Oh,
be
yeah,
in
that's
the
what I'm
poverty.
like,
This
this is
is
the way I'm
$2,500
here.
a year.
Yeah,
Residents in this area.
If you were to switch it, just, if you're asking me to,
So it's
Las Vegas to be in poverty, is that
not
the,
just
can you, would
The
that
same as
show?
another.
Yeah, because it's not taking.
Because that usually do have this.
So that's why, like, around UW.
So the real question, right, is do we want to grow up for in Reno or not?
Oh, it is, okay, Las Vegas.
I think that's true.
The better, the best.
But compared, but you can compare with forty-four.
So, for,
Yeah, so like,
Snapshot.
in Nevada, that doesn't tend to be, because like,
So that,
you
so
know,
the
the areas of
neighborhood
less
is different than the ones up.
population would be actually better.
Right, so to me, that's just.
Yeah, so if we're all in poverty with cross.
These are, yeah, these are the ones.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's clear.
No, because in,
You live everywhere. I know. Fleming Valley.
Go to Rochester.
because in,
But there was a TV show.
Cold Spring too.
I'd be curious to see.
So this course, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain how you found out what the
I'm running the mystery over here.
Rochester.
Were the median changes depending on what you
Or what cities are we looking
So
at?
like.
We looked at Winona a lot.
Okay, so is it good to grow up in poverty in Winona?
Yes.
Yeah.
Better than Minnesota?
About the same.
About the same, and then compared to the nation?
On screen, it's gonna be what you.
Way better.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
for sure.
We did find out that if you grew up as a 75th percentile on the east end of Winona, chances are you can have a great future.
Definitely don't want to.
So, and how did it work out? So, like, let's see, so if you're, because what is it, 75%, if you're 75% in America generally, how much do you make?
Growing up in Cincinnati.
It's like 60 grand, I think. Like, if you have rich parents, you make about 60. And if you have rich parents in eastern Monona, what are you at?
Yeah, so if you're a 75th percentile on the east end of Winona,
kind of,
probably not.
Dude, we should look, what's the actual dollar number, right? What do you make as an adult? If you grew up in the eastern, if you grew up rich on the east side,
So it's even better.
Oh, and
Thank you.
75% of
Thank
kids
you,
left.
thank you.
Yeah, everyone's leaving.
oh, you found that data too. Oh, that's interesting. So you grew up rich in eastern Monona, you left and don't make any money. And don't make any money, right? So that's quite like, why are they leaving? So maybe, yeah, that's like really interesting.
So pretty quick. It's the same, no matter what you choose.
So tell me what's East Winona like?
It's a lot of
I think that's
small.
what we're doing now, is kind of like big ones shot through our
Okay,
counties,
okay.
look at our little.
Okay, so think about that person's like kid's life, right? So you're in a big house with rich folks in this neighborhood surrounded by shotgun homes and poverty, right?
There couldn't have been too many.
There are not many, but the couple of them that are there, right? They grow up wanting Jordans and like, what are we, yeah, or whatever, you know, like, I don't know, not quite, but, right, the priorities are now like shaped by the environment.
Very interesting.
Okay, well that, yeah, well, cool. So growing up in poverty in Winona is good compared to the country, and then growing up wealthy in East Winona is not a good idea. But again, don't forget, right? You end up better, right? It's sort of because right, you was like 48 versus. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
But basically, I guess what you get to, right, is you end up doing about as well as the kids who grow up in poverty in your neighborhood. And everybody's sort of doing the same stuff. Yeah, it's like your privileged childhood doesn't help you out because all your buddies are into the same stuff you are, and it's apparently kind of dumb, but smarter than everything in Reno.
If you're below, you end up being probably 60%, 70% age.
You do well.
But if you're high, you drop well below 80.
What I have upstairs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's the same exact, I mean, it's the exact same area.
That's why I think of confusing myself here at this point.
So I'm
Line
looking
doesn't
at
change,
the
it's
town
how-
history and trying to think about.
There we go. See. All right. Anybody else to do an
That city
interesting town?
deserves it for putting their tracks the way they do right through town. But they would just get stuff for train every single day for 15, 20 minutes at a time.
I know. In the cross weeks, we have some bridges on occasion.
Well, you go through the cross, you don't even notice that there's trains. You go
We're
through
gonna
Winona,
change these.
Yeah.
it's a difference in how they come into the city.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you go through town right at 8 o'clock, that's it.
All races, females.
I usually get out
Metal
of
covers.
there. Me a little bit under you're not getting piles of honey.
I just assumed it was low and 750 high.
That is kind of striking.
Yeah.
60%.
If you go to U of M or
Yeah.
UW, you're gonna sit there forever.
Yeah, I think even though it's,
And that just changes the cost of that.
yeah, that's the university.
Because then she clicked everyone.
University.
She's
But then the whole
72%.
thing, she's
What's the University of Minnesota?
Okay, yeah.
Right next to it.
It's hard to say based on population, but I feel like,
This is rough.
you know, if you go into those areas that are outside of some major population areas, like Chicago and, Las Vegas, I don't think it's really good, but I mean, it's pretty much.
And that's.
North side.
One board share.
So.
You might, but I mean, it's just like you might,
Or you can include it if you want. I just read it.
sorry, yeah, yeah.
That's gonna be a high farming. I bet those are big, pig farms, stuff like that.
Is it, workers? Farms?
Where is it?
I just wanna make sure I'm getting the
Way
right
south.
services for the.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why,
So let's go, I'm gonna go to.
Well, there's a lot of farming in this area.
And they're all raw.
Yeah, look up at like Canyon, Canyon might be low. You got a turkey cheese.
I was like,
and this change here, Louisiana.
And
Yeah, a little.
even
I
there's,
guess we could do it a little.
that's the county of it.
It's a,
Two point
Yeah, right.
three, 0.9.
Which very tightly correlates with
Right, we still use this.
Yeah,
you should
And this number, this is at 34. Texas needs to be 34.
If you look at like our
And
Canyon,
then if we zoom in, it's like, oh, it's 15%.
and there's a large Hispanic population. Ashley.
oh,
So this
yeah,
neighborhood
we're-
here.
34.
what do I have to do? Just go back to the other screen.
Yeah, Postville, there's also.
Yeah, see, the Richmond's a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
52.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Processing plants.
and I guess it's 50, and he grew up in.
And this would be only those that actually answer the census.
Yeah, you know, I typed it down there, it should have been.
You know,
Yeah.
Is that citizenship?
All right. Well, let's tell some stories for a little bit.
Response rate.
All right, what did we learn? Tell me the tale of some towns here. All right, so this group you did some exploring in Winona. So, what did we find out about Winona?
Craig's hometown, he used to tell a story.
Yeah, that's right. So tell us a little bit about Winona that's going to be relevant.
Winona's a pretty poor county in terms of Minnesota, one of the poorest.
Okay, so Winona is poor compared to Minnesota broadly, okay?
If you're poor on the east side of the town, you have a better outcome than if you are 75th percentile on the same.
Oh, okay, and so let's talk about this. So east side Winona, did you look at some of the other data for that eastern part of Winona? So what are some facts about eastern Winona? Like,
People leave it.
okay, lots of people leave, so they move out of eastern Winona, very high leaving. Anything else about it?
The rent was pretty low.
Rent is low.
Pretty good employment percent.
Okay, so employment percent is good.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, so it's kind of an interesting sort of set of facts. I mean, incarceration rate, did you look at that one?
It was relatively low.
Low, okay.
I mean, even though it was lower for poor than it was for well off.
Got it. So it's kind of a not glamorous neighborhood that has jobs, but people don't stick around.
Yep.
Okay. And so in that neighborhood, if you grew up in poverty, you do then.
Rich.
Okay. So let me ask this question, right? So if I grow up poor in eastern Winona, do I do better than growing up poor in Minnesota generally?
It's about the same.
It's about the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So okay. And compared to America, better, right? This is kind of true about Minnesota broadly, right? So growing up in poverty in Minnesota, in Winona anyway, is about like growing up in poverty in Minnesota, which is significantly better than the nation as a whole. Okay. Now, what about growing up rich in this this interesting part of Winona, right? It's not glamorous, right? I would say, right? It's got a lot of good things, but it's cheap and
Blue collar.
blue collar, right? So you grow up rich in the blue collar part of Winona, what happens?
You have a worse outcome than you. Median income is low.
Median income is quite a bit lower. Interesting. And compared to Minnesota,
It's worse.
way worse compared to America, about the same. Yeah. So you've managed to scrub out all the Minnesota benefits
Yep.
by being rich in eastern Winona. Interesting, right? Everybody like gets it, right? So then maybe we start to get into telling stories about why that is, right? But that's not for right now. But gotta think what is it? Why? What's going on here? We can tell some stories. All right, now what about you guys? What's a city we explored you want to talk about?
Reno.
Reno, all right, we're in Reno. So tell me about Reno.
Reno is not a place you want to grow up.
Okay, is this based on personal experience? You would say that's true?
I didn't grow up there, but I did live there, and I would say it's true.
Okay, so based on your personal experience in Reno, you're not anxious to raise kids in Reno.
No.
Okay.
So the household income was lower than the state and the national average. Incarceration rate was high. Like in terms of fixed costs, the rent was relatively high compared to La Crosse. And 0% job growth.
Okay, so
There's not a lot of variation amongst the neighborhoods either. So.
oh, interesting. Just sort of very homogenously
Homogenously
bad. Okay, that's a good phrase. All right, so if I grow up in poverty in Reno, I can expect to make how much money?
32,000.
$32,000. If I grow up in poverty in Winona, how much do I expect to make as an adult? 34. Okay.
What do you pay for rent?
And don't forget, right? These folks that grew up in poverty in Winona don't have to be in Winona, right? So we don't know what they're paying in rent because they didn't leave, right? Same in Reno. You grew up in Reno doesn't mean you're living in Reno, although often it does, right? So in terms of dollars, you're not like incredibly better in Winona compared to growing up in Reno. But I bet your parents made more in Reno than your parents in Winona made. Because you were saying it's quite a significant improvement for your parents, I think, right?
For poor.
For poor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not true in Reno, right? So in Reno, if you grew up poor in Reno, you're not doing so great compared to Nevada and compared to America. Okay. So now, what about being rich in Reno? So if you grew up, the 75% are in Reno.
Still not great.
Not great.
50K.
50,000.
Okay, right? If you grew up rich in Winona, what do you make? So it's a huge difference, right?
You're much less likely to be incarcerated.
Okay. Less likely than other rich people from Nevada?
No, then low.
Okay, yeah, right. So the more interesting comparison would be if I grew up rich in Reno, am I in jail less than growing up rich in Nevada? That'd be fun to show. That's good. So there we go. Well, now we know, right? And again, right? And if we think about this, if I'm thinking, man, where do I want to raise my kids? Reno. That's probably not what I would think, right? I mean, so any casino town, resort town.
Good graduate school.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, that's true.
Yeah, if you compare a high income, incarceration rate versus high income here in La Crosse, it's like a third of what it is in Reno incarceration rate.
Oh, so if you grew up rich in Reno, you're
And you're
3
rich
times
in La
more
Crosse.
likely to be in prison
It is
than
then.
in La Crosse. That's a fun fact. Excellent. All right, back. Group number A. Which town are we going to talk about?
Ellie's awesome.
Ellie's awesome.
Yeah, I'll do Ellie, boy.
I nominated you as tribute.
Sorry, she's gonna be, so I'm from Prior Lake, Minnesota, which is a suburb of the Twin Cities.
Okay, Prior Lake.
Yeah, so if.
Tell me about Prior Lake. What's it like in Prior Lake? What are some data facts about Prior Lake from the stuff?
Prior Lake, so Savage, Prior Lake, they share the school district.
Okay.
Savage is the fastest growing suburb in Minnesota right now.
Okay.
So it's currently on the rise. I would say upper middle to upper class families. There's a lake in Prior Lake, so a lot of families live on the lake. And overall, there's a lot of commuters, so you drive into the cities for work.
Got it. So bedroom community, probably low incarceration rates, high incomes compared to maybe Minnesota average. Okay. So if I grew up poor in Prior Lake, right? Weird, but it happens.
Right.
What? How am I doing?
Making around 45,000.
Okay. Right. So that's a lot better than the 32 we get in Reno.
Right. To the Minnesota is 34.
Sorry, you said 42.
45.
45. Wow. So very much better than Minnesota probably. Okay. And compared to America, that's still quite a bit bigger.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, because what's the American number? Like 34, 33?
So the Minnesota and the U.S. were the same time. Go 34.
Okay, cool. All right, so you have great outcomes if you grow up in poverty in Prior Lake. So now, what if you have some wealth? What if you're on the richer side? How's the big?
64,000.
Okay, and right. What do you? Okay, if you grew up rich in Minnesota, what's your number?
52.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's still quite a bit higher. And the nation? What's the nation? I don't know what.
I had 52 for the nation.
Is that? Yeah, I mean, I guess we should all have the same number for rich nation, right? Did you guys leave? Oh, okay, that's fine. So yeah, all right. So the point is, right? If you grew up in Prior Lake, again, is it good to grow up poor in Prior Lake?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, if you have to grow up poor, do it in Prior Lake, right? If you have to grow up rich, grow up in Prior Lake, right? So the outcomes are good for both income groups. Okay. So there you go. That's fun, fascinating fact. And so then, right? So then the question is, what is it about Prior Lake that has that effect? And this is a huge effect, right? We're talking about people growing up in poverty who make significantly more than like the average American family, right? It's almost more than the average rich American childhood, right? Because it was like 48, 45, right? So if you grow up in poverty in Prior Lake, you're at 45. If you grow up rich in America, you're at 52, right? So like it's like being in Prior Lake almost automatically is as good as growing up rich.
It's a good school.
Well, okay, so what is it is a whole nother adventure. After the break, yes.
Question for you. So,
Yeah.
are they really growing up in poverty, or are they growing up as the bottom 25% of
Yeah.
that district?
Great question.
Yeah.
Let me see. That is a great question.
But you could look at a lot of affluent areas, and they're the poorest people in affluent areas are still going to be richer than.
Because 33,000 is not poverty.
But again, this is right. This is we're talking about what your parents make, not what you make, right? So the question is, if you're a 25%er in this website, your parents' income is 25% of something. The question is 25% of what? So the criticism could be, right? If you're a 25%er in Prior Lake, maybe you're still Silver Spoon person, right? But I don't think that's how this works. I think it's 25% by a national standard, I believe. Now, we should get into that to make sure.
25 percentile of parent income.
Average annual household income.
In America, in the thing I clicked, right, that's the question. It's like 25% of what?
What are those things at the bottom where it says everyone, selected group?
Yeah, so this is changing the colors to match whether, right, so if you do selected group, we're gonna say, okay, I wanna compare low to low, which we wanna do typically, right? Because we're not interested in how, like, okay, so there was the example where we say, well, if I'm poor in Prior Lake, what's that like compared to everyone in America? And we would find out that being poor in Prior Lake is better than being everyone in America. But that's how you would do that comparison. But that's not normally what we're trying to do. Usually we're trying to say growing up poor in Prior Lake is better than growing up poor in America, or poor in Nevada, or whatever. So normally we're a selected group. But I believe, right, I believe that the 25% is you are a 25%er nationally. I believe. But maybe not. I guess we should find out.
It doesn't make, the income doesn't, am I saying it wrong, or maybe I'm just not getting what you're saying.
Yep.
Let's go with the latter, but if they're making 33,000 a year in 1980, whatever it is, they're still above the poverty line, so it would be in that area.
Okay, this is important, right? So, okay, right? The kids are not in poverty as adults. Right? If you're at 32, you're not in poverty as an adult. That does not mean you are not in poverty as a kid.
Right.
So that's the difference here, right?
Okay.
So if you make, right, so like in Reno, if you grew up in the bottom 25%, you make 32, that's not in poverty. But if you're a bottom 25%, that's probably close to the poverty. Like on average, right? Because again, on average, you're at 12 and a half, right? Because it's everybody between 0 and 25. So 12 and a half is going to be poverty, or close to it. So that's important, right? Even the people in Winona, right? The people in Winona that make 48 or 45 or whatever that was, right? They still grew up in poverty. They're just not currently in poverty because they lived in Winona and got all the good Winona juice and got out. I mean, they got into the middle class, right? They didn't Prior Lake it, but they did okay, right? Okay, so let's take like 2 minutes, 4 minutes, and then we're gonna get into what, right? Because we want to disentangle, right? What is it about Prior Lake and Winona that Reno doesn't have, right? What's going on?
The secret sauce.
What's the secret sauce? We're gonna answer that question.
So he told me just to click everyone, and then it says 44K. Click on household income. And so if you see
Ooh. I have to make a quick jog in my office because I have your
Thank you for
very
that.
fragrant
I really
binder.
appreciate that, thank you.
It smells.
That's my marketing binder.
the media's saying the same.
How are you, Arturo? Yeah. Yeah, trail mix.
I don't know what's
Are you ready to go on vacation? No.
You do the on screen, and that's gonna measure what's on your screen. It still says everyone essentially. I'm not sure what selected group is. I'm not sure if that's getting what's outlined there.
Everyone's still 44.
So that might be
So
selected.
if I go to Prior Lake, 35K, so you're making the average meal is 45, and then Prior Lake, you're making 35, 0 income. And you're making 35
gonna have to let me in anyway, because my car keys are.
Oh, they will? Okay.
Oh, that's
I'll
not
wait.
true, I have my car keys.
Yeah, you're fine. See you.
There's a donut in my office, but that's not necessary.
Where are you living?
The Brophy's closed.
Oh, weird.
So if I have my ID, I can get in, but
Right now, downtown at, you know, the